Okay, so I'm going to show you how I use my reusable stencils and not use vinyl to paint a stencil. So in a previous video, which I can put the link for, I showed how to make a stencil file, an SVG, and make it so that you could reuse it by making bridges over to the counters or the islands that are in between some of the letters like the B's and the E's. And so I'll put that link down below. So what you end up with is a stencil file that I cut that looks like this. Now, this is a portrait I made for my best friend's dog. And I made that actually using a stencil too because Silhouette's amazing. But she always used to call her dog died, and she always used to call it Little Fat Black Dog, so I'm making this for her. So please don't take offense. She loved this dog very much, and it was fat, but she meant it with all good intentions. So what I do first is I tape the stencil on, I measure, that's what this ruler's for, I measure and make sure that it's, the same as you would for anything, make sure that it's level, and then I tape it on. But what I do is first I tape it so that it's just in its place like this. But I also tape it a little closer to the words because I find that I can get it really close that way. I roll over the tape, I can flip it up a little bit, and maybe put it right here, and then I really press down so that I get a really good seal right here to where I feel like it's really close to the wood. I know that we're all trying to eliminate bleed, so we don't want any bleed going on. So then I just use regular latex house paint. That's me. Everyone uses something different. So I just take my paint, and what I do is I take my stencil brush and I offload a lot of the paint onto the lid. So let's see, make sure you can see. You can see if there's a lot of paint on this lid and not much on the brush. Then I even further offload on to a paper towel so that I really don't have much paint on here, and it's really very dry. So then you can see, maybe, I don't know if you can see, but it's very dry. So then I just do my stenciling. As I'm stenciling, I'm holding this down even tighter to the wood. So I hold. I move my fingers over, and I'm just constantly pushing on the stencil just to keep it as close as possible. And you can see that because my brush is pretty dry, it's probably not going to bleed that much, right? So I do that, hold it again. I hold it. My fingers are always getting full of paint. It is water-based latex paint, so it will wash right off. Okay, and it dries really quickly. So here I go, and I have got one coat done. Now I find that it dries extremely fast. That was a very, very, very little amount of words. Sometimes I'm doing a gigantic sign, and by the time I get done, it's already dry on one end. This is probably almost dry. So I can take a tiny, tiny, tiny bit more paint, offload on here, and let's go again. And again. So I am now going over what is dry. We're getting a tiny bit more of coverage each time. I'm continuing to push with my fingers on this stencil to keep it flat because, again, this does not have adhesive. So I probably won't be using this again unless my friend's daughters want me to make versions for them, which they very well might because they're gonna love it too. But it's not adhesive, so you can use it over and over again with just a little bit of soap and water because, again, this paint is water-based. So now you see that we've got even more coverage. So I usually do with the dry brush technique that I'm using, because you're not putting a ton of paint on each time, I usually go around 3 rounds, and I find that that is typically good coverage. That gets a nice good coverage. So I'm going to do one more coverage of this little fat black dog. And here I go again. Let's just see. I do think that's basically dry. So here we go. And now this last coverage is really just kind of filling in any little speckly spots that didn't get covered the first 2 rounds. All right. Make sure and get those little speckles in. And that's it. We've got 3 coats on our non-adhesive stencil. So I am going to pull off the stencil now. So that's super easy because it's just taped on. And here you go. That looks really, really nice, right? But there's still little places where I made those bridges. So you can see, I'm gonna make it a little closer here, that in the E, you see over here that little line, and the A, and the A, and the B. So I'm gonna fill those in now. And that's gonna be easy because we have toothpicks and we have a font that's actually pretty simple. But the edge of a toothpick is your friend. So now I take over this little bit of paint that I have here, dip my little brush, or my little toothpick, and I start filling in. You just have to have a pretty steady hand. Now this font happens to be a font that is pretty kind of bumpy and lumpy, which I just like this font a lot. It's like a typewriter font. And so it's not going to be, some other fonts you have to be a little more smooth with your hand if they're like a really pretty script font or something like that. But even that's not that hard. And you can always clean up with a little bit more of the other paint. So here we go. We've got a few of the letters filled. A little bit more. We're going to fill in this D over here. Take just tiny bits. You can also offload always onto your paper towel. There's my D. Here's my O. And yes, I know I'm making it look easy, and you might go, oh yeah, it won't be that easy for me, but like everything else, it's practice over time. See, I didn't do so great over there. So what I'll probably end up doing, I'll try to smooth it out a little bit, and maybe I'll put a dollop back of this background color over if I don't like the way it looks. But again, with this font, it's not particularly hard. Now I might take the other edge of this toothpick, because the toothpick is your friend, and try to smooth it out a little bit. But I think what I'm gonna end up doing is putting a little bit, I think I was a little heavy-handed, so I think I'm gonna take a little bit of the background color in some of these spots, although it's looking pretty good. But I think what I'm gonna do is take the background color of this particular painting and just touch up a little bit. Again, this all dries so quickly. Again, I use this interior latex paint. Dries super quick. And I just do a little touching up here and there. I blot a little bit so that it doesn't look like a really heavy drop. Tools and tricks of the trade that you learn over time. And we do touch up. And you know, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little touch up over here. Maybe I did a little too much touch up. And then I go back and do a little black. You know, it's kind of a little bit of a dance here. Figure out what you got. But it's basically looking good. So this stencil though, again, you know, instead of having to make stencils constantly over and over and over again, if you know you're going to be doing the same stencil over and over again, if you're going to be making the same sign, especially for sign makers, it's a great way to save money because you're not using vinyl over and over and over again, and you save time because you're not cutting constantly, and you get just as good of a result, in my opinion. I think it looks great. And except for this is bugging me a little bit right here. I think I took out too much of the black here on this G. So I'm gonna do that. And there we go. There we have it. Little fat black dog. Looking good. Reusable stencil. And the stencil that we used is right here, and all we need to do is wash it off. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too long, and if it was, I don't blame you for stopping it. All right, thank you so much. And go to, JobellaDigitalDesigns.com. I have all my designs and tutorials and lots of good sales. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.